Now, over the last year, we've been commemorating the stars of World War One, and throughout the months, we've heard some fascinating stories along the way. And now another story's been brought to life by local author Mackenzie Brown. Annie's War tells the story of his grandparents' early lives between 1914 and 1945.
This is a book I've been attempting to put together for many years. A story that I first heard when I was a small boy around the dinner table. Stories about my grandmother, grandfather.
Yeah.
And I always thought it would make a good story, but it's involved a lot of research, and that's why it's probably only just now come to fruition.
Well, I mean, you can only get so much information from your family and from what you can remember being told yourself and the rest of it. What does that consist of? How did you put it together?
Part of it has been through the help of Liverpool Central Library. They've been brilliant, particularly tracing my grandmother's family, who, when you read the first few chapters of the book, was scattered to the four winds when her mother died in childbirth, having her. And like a lot of fathers in those days, they couldn't cope with looking after children. So he just walked out on them.
Really?
All the children were given away, and she was given away to a neighbour in the street, would you believe, a barren couple. So she didn't know them. She even thought her father was dead until she found out a few years later he was actually had been living in the community and had made no attempt to speak to her.
It's an emotional story, that isn't it, for you, as far as putting it together?
Absolutely, yeah. It's not like anything else I've written because it's obviously a bit too close, at times. And you read it back and you think, it's these are people I actually knew and remember.
What was the most interesting thing about it that you found out then?
I found out that my grandfather had left a diary because he was a prisoner of war.
Right.
He was captured in North Africa, and although he told me a little bit about his war stories towards the end of his life, I never realised he'd actually made a note of a lot of it when he was in an Italian prisoner of war camp. So I got my hands on that, and then my great aunt Margie and great uncle Albert were instrumental in filling in a lot of the gaps from that period, the war, particularly the Second World War.
So the story ends in 1945 at the end of the Second World War, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
What a period of time to cover there, because it's full of, we were saying before, emotion. It's a very powerful story, isn't it?
Sure, absolutely. And for me, I always say they were quite ordinary people living through extraordinary times, and that's really what I've tried to do in the book, show them. I mean, what they went through were probably the same as what many people in the city went through during that period.
So is it all based on fact?
Absolutely. I mean, the only thing that perhaps you could say might not be true is some of the dialogue where you've had to try and put dialogue in where how the characters might speak. But apart from that, it's a true story, as far as I can tell. I
mean, as a writer, when you've got that diary in your hands, you must have gone, wow.
Oh, it was fantastic, and seeing his handwriting as well. Because he was quite a good scholar, my grandfather, quite a dignified man, whereas my grandmother was the absolute opposite, the antithesis. She was, somebody who played truant from school quite a lot and was, quite a vicious temper, but a warm heart.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some great photos in the book. Just talk us through the cover. I'm looking at the cover there.
Yeah, on the cover is my grandmother in the centre, my Uncle Jim on the right, and my mother is actually the small rotund one on the table.
She won't be happy you saying that about her.
No, she won't. No. And then my Auntie Rona is the babe in arms.
Wow.
My daughter designed the cover. She sort of put in the plains at the top and the terraced houses at the bottom there to try and give it that.
Really works, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I'm really pleased with it, yeah.
Fantastic. And there's a lot of great photographs throughout the book. Did you have them at immediate source, or did you have to go rooting for them?
I did. There was only one I didn't have, and that was one of my great auntie Margie, where I've had to contact her family very recently, and were kind enough to let me have her wedding photo. Because they were very important. Without them, I probably never would have had the information, the knowledge to write the book. But yeah, my mother was the source of all the others. She actually kept all these photographs.
Really?
So it was fantastic from that perspective.
Wow. I mean, it must be great as an author. I know you've done this many times now. This is your 6th book. To see your story in print on the shelf there, it must be a great sense of achievement.
Yeah, I know. It's an immense thrill. I mean, you always think, is there something in the book you could have done differently, you could have done better? But once you've done it, you've got to just sort of hope that that's the way it is, and you're happy with it. But yeah, no, absolutely, immensely pleased, and it gets a family off my back as well, Sean, to be honest.
This has been a long time coming, this one, hasn't it?
It certainly has, yeah.
What do you think they would have made of it all, your grandparents?
My grandmother probably would have hidden her head under a tea towel, and my grandfather would have probably tried to imagine it wasn't happening. They weren't boastful people.
I know.
They were quite reserved, so they would have been a bit surprised. Why on earth would anybody write a story about my life? Probably would have been what they'd have said.
So I know a lot of people will, but who in particular is going to enjoy this book then?
I think anybody who likes a good drama, a good love story, because in essence it is a love story, and it's an uplifting story at the end. Even though throughout the book there's lots of drama, and there are some casualties as you would expect during that period. But anybody who likes a good read, anybody who would like to know more about how people tried to survive in those years in Liverpool.
Sure. So what's next?
To be honest, I'm writing a series of detective books set in Liverpool, complete fiction this time. Yeah. I've written 2 of them, and I'm going to try and, it's a 5-part series, I'm going to try and get that finished next. And that's called Prince of the City, that particular one.
Right, so you're not sitting on your laurels here, you've got one out and think, right, bang, I'm into the next one, or do you run 2 at once, or?
No, I think that's dangerous. You can sort of end up, losing your track if you do that. But absolutely, one at a time for me.
Where can we get it?
This one's available on Amazon, and really any sort of independent bookstore, if you ask them, they can order it at Amazon by Create Space.
Really is an interesting one, It's called Annie's War by local author Mackenzie Brown. And you relate to a lot of it, when he's talking about his family in particular. You think about your own grandparents and stuff like that. It's a great read. Check it out. It really is worth it. Annie's War, out in all good book stockists, as you heard.